And to the angel of the church of Pergamos write, These things says he who has the sharp two-edged sword. I saw your deeds, and where you live, where the throne of Satan is. And you hold my name, and you did not deny my faith. As you remember, my friends, last week we started the epistle of the Lord to the angel of the church of Pergamos. And he told him that I am the one who has the sharp two-edged sword. I know your deeds and where you live. You live in an area basking in idolatry, and you did not deny my faith, just like in the earlier days. My servant Antipas did not deny my faith, but he confessed my faith. He held my name, and he became my trustworthy and faithful martyr, there exactly where Satan lives. I know your deeds and where you live, there where the throne of Satan is. The Lord truly knew the environment that surrounded the church of Pergamos, an environment experienced by St. Paul when he found himself in Athens, where St. Luke points out to us in the Acts of the Apostles. His spirit was irritated. He was frustrated because he saw that the city was full of idols. Athens, the city of Athens, was full of idols, and the apostle was feeling a certain holy anger and a certain disgust. Now, what was lurking behind this city of Pergamos? The Lord reveals that there in that city was the throne of Satan, the place where Satan lives. Consequently, my friends, as we see here, we have a revealing testimony of our Lord about idolatry of every form and every age. So when someone poses the question, what is idolatry? We have this very revelation, this very testimony, which truly reveals that when some people find themselves worshiping idols, whether now or in the past, we know exactly what they are worshiping. Now, how would they accept this truth if we were to tell them exactly what they worship? No one could really define what it means for someone to worship an idol except the voice from heaven. The voice from heaven then reveals to me what is idolatry. So now we will come to see, my friends, this relationship that exists between idolatry and Satan, which is a most direct relationship since Satan is enthroned in idolatry according to the Lord. But let's see how the very nature of idolatry, and please don't fail to pay attention, thinking that all this may belong to a distant past, thinking that idolatry does not exist today, and all this may not be of interest to us. Let's not forget that at the end of his most theological epistle, St. John says, "My children, watch yourselves from idols." This is how John ends the epistle, which means that you, my children, who are in a spiritual state to understand this high level of theology that I am writing to you, that God is love, God is light, and the one who we heard and we saw, etc. Theology worthy of the beginning of his gospel. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So even though you are spiritually advanced students, and you may live in this area of theology and understanding, do not think that it is impossible for you to slip into the area of idolatry. Idolatry happens to be a very delicate area which someone can slip in and slide in without realizing it. Idolatry exists, and it will always exist, not only in the nations that never got to know Christ, but in the Christian nations as well. Every form of idolatry can be found in the Christian nations. This is why I ask you to pay attention as we will analyze the very nature of idolatry, and afterwards we will see how it relates to Satan. As you know, creation consists of the idol of the Creator, who is God. Creation is the external reflection of God. It is something that is created by God, but this creation is not of His substance. It is outside of His substance, and this is the difference between something born and something created. Jesus Christ, God the Word, is from the substance of the Father, and consequently, we have the expression born of the Father. Nature is the work of the hands of God. The substance of this nature has no relationship whatsoever with the substance of God, and for this reason, it is expressed as creation, or something fashioned from the hands of the person who creates. Now, when we use the term idol to describe nature, we said that it is the external reflection of God. We need to refer to optics, something we studied in physics, to help us along, because this is exactly what happens in the area of optics. When we place an object in front of a mirror, the mirror does not duplicate the object, obviously, but it simply presents the idol of this object. When I place a clock in front of a mirror, it will show a clock. However, this is not the actual clock, but the idol of the clock. So before I have an idol, I need to place a certain object in front of this mirror. So if we remember from our physics class, what is in front of the mirror is called an object, and what is displayed or reflected in the mirror, the scientific term of this reflection is called idol. This idol serves to give me some of the characteristics of the object, the size, the time, if the idol happens to be a clock, but all these characteristics are not my clock, but its idol. A similar relationship exists between God and nature. In essence, the attributes or the characteristics of God are reflected in His creation, such as His wisdom, His infinity, His divinity, His might, and these attributes are reflected in nature, with nature being like a mirror, and the object of this mirror is God. God being outside of His creation, and God is reflected in this creation. For instance, God is wise, so it only stands to reason that whatever He creates, He does so according to His wisdom. So I see the wisdom of God in nature. I see the attributes of God in nature. I see, for instance, that 1 gram of matter encloses an awesome power. The matter that explodes in the atomic bomb is very small, a few grams, if that, of a nuclear atomic substance. And the power behind these few grams is awesome. Now I ask you, what kind of power is hidden inside the entire universe? And if this power of the universe is inconceivable, then how about the power of God? And by this I come to see the omnipotence of God reflected in nature. Likewise, I see the infinity of God when we begin to ponder about the dimensions of the universe. What dimensions? We cannot even grasp what's there with our mind. Our eye will never reach these distances. Our poor mind is so limited, it is only designed to function between 0 and infinity. Actually, greater than 0 and less than infinity. And it cannot grasp these two extremes. So whatever is greater than 0, my brain can understand. Whatever is less than infinite, my brain can understand it. But the design of the human mind cannot understand the idea or the meaning of 0, or the idea or the meaning of infinity. So the universe may appear to us as infinite, but it is not infinite. It only appears to be so in our mind. And the one who is truly infinite is the one who created this universe. But these works cannot be done by any other entity except the one who's called God. So divinity, infinity, pan-wisdom, omnipotence, and all those attributes of God referring to His person are reflected upon his creation, much like an object is reflected in a mirror. Therefore, the wisdom that exists in the natural world is the idol of God. The omnipotence that exists in the world is the idol of God. When I see the wisdom behind the beauty of a flower, I cannot say that the flower is God, but something that reflects the wisdom of God. So we cannot confuse God with nature, which is the plight of the New Age movement, nor can I say that God has no relationship whatsoever with nature, which is atheism. I will not equate God with nature, nor would I remove him totally from created nature and isolate him at some point or place, since he has no relationship with nature. But God is reflected with his attributes, his characteristics, inside his creation, and the purpose of creation, which is full of the reflections and energies of God, the purpose of the creation is to elevate me, the logical and sensible human being, to elevate me step by step like a ladder to find the object which is reflected. Again, let's not forget that the very design of our mind is limited. Unfortunately, there's a certain arrogance today in some people who think that if today we don't understand something, tomorrow we will. Yes, but is this something within the given capabilities? Because if it is, yes, but if it's outside of our given capabilities, then this something will escape our understanding tomorrow and next year and forever. Science itself and philosophy, when it comes to the capabilities of the human intellect, is quite aware of the limits. It is important to know our limits so we can overcome this certain intellectual arrogance. So the purpose is for me to use the capabilities of my mind, so when seeing all these energies of God reflected in nature, to begin to ascend like a ladder, so I can discover the object which is reflected, and more specifically, the person that's being reflected inside nature, the person of God. Just like when I see in a mirror, when I see a person, I don't continue to look in the mirror, but I turn around to see the real person that was just reflected in my mirror. This is what man is supposed to do. He's not supposed to limit himself to nature, but at every moment he needs to turn his eyes beyond nature to find and see the reflected person, the person of God inside this nature. Now, if man loses God from his visual spectrum and limits himself to nature only, in other words, people see these reflections of the energies of God, but they do not bother to search farther to discover God for reasons that we will expand a bit later, then man begins to observe only the idols. He stops at the reflections, and since he equates these attributes, infinity, omnipotence, wisdom, with the mirror, much like a cat or a dog, when they look in a mirror, they are very curious about this other cat or dog that's staring at them. Why? Because they equated the idol with the object. They think that there's another animal inside the mirror, but it is only the idol, as we are explaining all this time. So if man now comes to confuse these two, the object with the idol, and he confuses the reflections of God in nature, thus saying, how wise is Mother Nature? And look what beautiful things it makes. Then the idols inside nature become one with God for that person. And man no longer looks at God, but nature, which nature he now deifies. This is called worship of idols, a state where the characteristics of God expressed in nature, which are not God, but the characteristics of God reflected inside nature. So based on this confusion, man created goddess Athena to worship wisdom. He created god Apollo to worship fine arts and beauty. He created Zeus in his quest to worship power. He made up goddess Demetra to worship Mother Earth. But all these are characteristics of God, the one God. Obviously, there is no god Apollo or Athena or Demetra. I will not worship wisdom. I will not deify beauty. I will not deify earth. But what? I will attempt to search beyond these reflections to come in touch with the true God. Again, you may be thinking, why are you telling us all these things? We are not idolaters. We are Christians. These things are quite simplistic. My friends, we only need to think that some very wise people passed through this world and they were not able to differentiate between God and creation. And they equated God with his creation. They worshiped the creation instead of the Creator. Then you will tell me that we are justified in mentioning these things, even though these things took place in a distant past in some remote areas of the earth. My friends, what if I were to tell you that the same thing happens even today? What if we were to tell you that those people that slip into Freemasonry, aren't they educated people? Don't they have degrees? How do they come to believe in idolatry? Because Freemasons are idolaters. Do not forget this. Freemasonry is a religion, and specifically a religion of idolatry of ancient mysteries. They admit this themselves in their journals. So how can an educated person become attracted to this faith that believes that the sun, the great architect of the universe, can be the God of the universe? How can he confuse the power of the sun, its energy, its light, and the wisdom of its makeup with God, and to admit that this is God? I was reading the other day about the great Origen, a great writer of the early church. Now you may laugh, but Origen, who excelled in some areas of the church, he reached the very sad moment of his life to write that the sun, the moon, and the stars have understanding. They are noetic beings. Now, if in the Christian philology, in the Christian domain, we have this sort of tragedy, then we can understand that delusion is commonplace in the lives of everyday people despite the light of Christ. From the moment that I come to deny Christ, I automatically become an idolater. And today, the Christian nations in general, have denied Christ, and they automatically fall into idolatry of the crude form or the fine form of idolatry, which is not so obvious. But all these things are summarized by St. Paul in his epistle to Romans, chapter 1, verses 19 to 23, to show us the plight of the ancient world and their relationship with God. And unfortunately, these things apply to our world today as well. And he says, the knowledge of God has become apparent to people because God revealed himself to them. And St. Paul explains his invisible energies, even the ethical energies, if you will, even love, they were stamped in the universe. The love of God, the mercy of God, all these are obviously stamped in the universe. As we see, God does not take away anything from these energies. The universe appears to be the same even after the fall. Nothing is being lost simply because the providence of God is always active and the love of God, which is combined with wisdom. The providence of God consists of the power, the love, and the wisdom of God. So St. Paul says, because his invisible qualities or his eternal power and his divinity can be seen very clearly from the time of the creation, it was expected that they should be perceived through the creations. But what became perceived through the creatures, and this is exactly what was worshipped, instead of this being used as the means for a person to come to discover and worship God, and this would render them inexcusable, St. Paul continues, he says, because having this knowledge of God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were they thankful, but became futile in their thoughts and their foolish hearts. Professing to be wise, they became fools. Their foolish hearts were darkened, professing to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible men, and birds, and four-footed animals, and creeping things. So they came to the conclusion that God is a human being, so let's create his statue, or a bird, or a snake, or a cow, and so on. And that's the depth of the foolishness of the darkened man. So idolatry is the state when a man limits his spiritual horizon to anything created without expanding beyond and past what he sees towards God. This is idolatry. This anything created can be beyond the works or the creations as I see them. I can deify the stars, the heavenly powers, a river like the Nile River, deify the oceans in the person of Poseidon. And it seems that even today we worship the sea. Even to this day here in Greece, when we have rough seas, people say that Poseidon must be stirring up the waters with his trident. And of course, these are mere phrases, but we explained earlier that even educated people come to believe these things someday. Now, people may not come to worship the statue of Poseidon, but they come to believe in the power of the sea or the power of Mother Nature. And you can't fool with Mother Nature. And eventually, people come to believe in the power of their intellect. People believe and depend on their inner power, the power of men, and they idolize themselves, they deify themselves, they worship their egos. This is the tragic dilemma of the poor, pitiful man of today. So beyond these created things or natural things of the world, idols can also be wealth, fine art, architecture, technology, science, the luxurious lifestyle. And some of the super optimists of last century were saying, some of these philosophical minds, they were stating that now we don't have to worry about anything because science will solve every problem of society. Long live science. We no longer need God. God is dead. Long live technology and science. Now, if science and technology solved our problems, or if it complicated it or multiplied our problems, I think we do not need to comment on this. Just look around you. There's a drugstore and a psychology clinic at every corner. We are now existing in a nightmare of the super optimists, those who were promising, give us 100 years and you will see how this world will evolve. We see the fruits of science and technology, and we will see if we avoid World War III in the 21st century. We have replaced God and the providence of God with our faith in drugs and medicine and science in general, and we have come to idolize the conveniences of our scientific progress, which conveniences are not bad in themselves as long as we do not idolize our lifestyle and insulate ourselves from God, replacing the true God with these idols of our days. It is common knowledge that the true God always comes to destroy and overturn these idols. But we might as well continue a little bit farther here since we are talking about idols. We must also say that our home can become an idol along with our children and our relatives. How many times we see ourselves making the ultimate goal and purpose of our life, the focus of our life, a happy family, a beautiful home, a happy home, so we focus on the family. Now let's not trick ourselves because we may transfer this family back and forth to church every Sunday. Let's not be deceived because we may take Holy Communion and do this now and then and take Holy Confession, go to Holy Confession. In our depth, we are idolaters. Idolatry is in our bone marrow. If you will, we believe in our careers, we believe in our home, we believe in our children. We idolize these things. This is precisely why we are destroyed when we happen to lose them. Take, if you will, the object of worship from the eyes of a worshiper, and you will see his immediate response. So if your home, your children vanish in front of your very eyes, you will be devastated. Now, we are not talking about the natural grief the natural shock that we all feel. This is human nature. When I lose a loved one, a member of my family, when I lose my home, it is natural for me to feel grief. I'm not going to be laughing about this matter. However, when I cannot cope, when I consider suicide, or when I want to jump off a bridge, or when I want to end it all, this means that the things or persons that I lost were my idols, and I was worshiping them without realizing it. So as you can see, idolatry can easily slip in our life. For this reason, and from the analysis that we presented so far, you can understand the depth of idolatry that exists in the lives of the people around us and our own lives, and we are specifically referring to the Christians of our times. So this is idolatry. But now let's see what's behind this state of idolatry. For instance, when I say I am a sun worshiper, what is behind this, or behind the moon and the stars, which guide people's lives today, or the luxurious lifestyle, or my child, or my wealth, or technology, or fine arts? What can hide behind all this? Let's listen how the Lord characterizes this condition. The throne of Satan, there where Satan lives. Now, how is it possible for Satan to place his throne behind the very things that reflect the qualities of God? Satan enthrones himself behind these things, and he lives there. And specifically here in the epistle to the bishop of Pergamos, Satan was enthroned in the altar of Zeus, a magnificent temple. A huge statue of Zeus was available there, and Pergamos was considered the city of the most idols, with the most idols in Asia Minor. Pergamos was recognized for its multitude of altars, and it was quite well known for this. And now the Lord says that this altar found on this 300-meter hill within the city limits was the throne of Satan. Now let's listen for an explanation to all this. Satan, Lucifer, the one who brings the morning light, he was an angel of light, but he fell because of pride. He fell from the heavens, was a prayer of exorcism says. He fell, he lost his light-bearing quality, and he fell in the visible created world. He was preliminarily sentenced here in this created world, being expelled from the heavenly realm. He was thrown out. All the evil spirits were also expelled because of their pride. They lost their God-given light. Unfortunately, we do not understand how. We don't have any more details about this. The only thing is that the angels are not light in themselves. They are not sources of light, but they receive their light from the source, from divine glory, from divine energy, because God is light. Now the devil lost this light of God, and he has been isolated from divine glory. Divine glory is the uncreated light, the light of the transfiguration on Mount Tabor. So he lost his light, and thus he remained dark. Now you may wonder, or you may ask, how can the devil change into an angel of light? Well, I will answer you that this demonic light is not the uncreated light, but created light, the very light that we get from the sun or from the light bulb. Now, how can the devil get a hold of this created light? How can he envelop himself with it? How can he take different forms? These are all mysteries of the spiritual world, which we do not have the capabilities to comprehend. The important thing is that the light of the devil is created, and it deceives people. And this is why our spiritual elders, the ascetics of our church, have this ability, or gift rather, to discern. St. Paul says that one of the gifts of the Holy Spirit is discretion. And St. John also accentuates to test the spirits to see if they are from God. The devil appears as light, and I need to ask, is he an angel? Is this uncreated light and the appearance of an angel? Or is this the devil with a created energy? If I don't have experience, I will be deceived. But the spiritual ascetic who has the Spirit of God and the gift of discretion, which is never something very easy, I'm being very sincere, the spiritual ascetics will say, this is the devil. They can discern, they know right away. And when they think this is the devil, and the minute they say it, the devil disappears.